Hello everyone, my name is Andrew Nobbins and this is the sixth walkthrough of my virtual reality project featuring the sets from Space 1999. This is the Diorama Scene that we've seen before, but over here where we used to see the main mission diorama, we now see a new section that I've added to the project. And so this is the corridor set from Season 1, along with the travel tube on one end of the corridor. And again, this travel tube is from Season 1, and I'll talk about the differences between Season 2 later on. The corridor itself, from the photos from the TV show, I was able to reproduce it basically from here down to about here and then back again. Now, how this corridor connects to the main mission set was a mystery. And so I chose the path of least resistance. Before I talk about that, let's just look at what I've done here in this diorama set. So here we can, if I just move the corridor, the 3D corridor out of the way, you can see the full plan of what I've modeled so far. So Commander Koenig's office and main mission set, we've seen that before in the previous walkthroughs. And this is the new corridor section that I've added. Now, the question was, how does this connect to that? And there were many ways that you could do it, and there was just no clear answer. In the pilot episode, we actually see Commander Koenig arriving on Moonbase Alpha via the travel tube where he meets Victor Bergman. And we can clearly see them walking down this corridor towards main mission, and then they appear through this corridor and then walk in via that entrance there. So that suggested, maybe main mission in relation to this area was down in this direction. But then there are other scenes where we see actors going from main mission through this door and then they come out through that door. So it's all up to interpretation. I mean, this section here could be maybe rotated 90 degrees. If it was rotated 90 degrees this way, I don't think that would work, because then that would suggest the travel tube would pass right in front of these windows, which it clearly doesn't. If it's rotated the other way, then when we see Commander Koenig and Victor Bergman walking down here and then appearing here, that doesn't quite work, because if it was over there, you'd see them coming in through here, and that didn't happen. So there's so many different ways that you can interpret these things, and especially because the show was so inconsistent with how it did things. So I opted for this option here where, clearly this exists in the corridor set the way it is here. So the question is, how does that section connect to this section here? And so I just opted for this style of connection. Architecturally speaking, it is a little bit strange that we would have a double wide corridor coming down to a single wide corridor and then back to a double wide corridor. The way that I rationalized that was that the traffic flow would maybe split up, and that would justify having single width corridor. And then particularly in the comms posts, there's signage which shows restaurants and medical centers and all sorts of things. And so it suggests that there's accommodation and possibly restaurants down in this direction. So what I did in this model, and you'll see it when we, in fact, you can see it here. What I've done, as people come down here, there's a section here which theoretically might go to restaurants, and another one here that might go to living quarters. So again, architecturally speaking, in terms of traffic flow, my theory was that the double wide corridor goes single and then single, and then here it meets up with traffic going into the restaurant. So this single and that traffic then goes back into a double corridor, which justifies its existence that way. So now, in regard to this particular diorama scene, not much has changed except for the addition of that. And if we look at the menu, you can see here we're in the diorama scene, and we have these two options here, show main mission and show corridors. Now, I did originally try having the corridors and the main mission all as one model. But I think I may have been starting to hit the limit of what the graphics card can handle, because I found when I was manipulating the model, it started to become very jerky. So I split the main mission from the corridors in this diorama. It's not split up in the actual full-size scene, but here I've split it up. And so I thought that solved my problem. And then afterwards, I started to see the same stuttering in the models, but then at other times the stuttering wasn't there. So there's some issue going on which I don't quite understand. So for now, I've left the two halves separate in this diorama scene. So if we go back to the menu, we've got the show main mission and show corridors. So if I go to show main mission, you can see down here, show the main mission appears. And if I go to corridors, it goes there, go back to main mission, and there's there. And so, we can move that out of the way. And then if we go to reset objects, you can see main mission is reset there, and then we go to corridors and that resets there. And it falls directly over the top of the plan that's shown below. So, let's have a look at the corridor set. If I come down here and I turn off gravity, I'll just make it a little bit easier to grab this object and just place it in space and look at it. And actually, interestingly, before we go on any further, you can see here how difficult it is to grab an object with no gravity and just let it go of it and not have it have some residual rotation or some residual movement. It's really difficult. Now, the reason I mention this is because recently I watched a NASA YouTube video of one of the astronauts doing a tour of the International Space Station. And funnily enough, he had an iPad sitting, which he was holding, and it had some pictures of the space station which he was using to convey whatever he's talking about in the video. And he'd placed the iPad, it'd be floating there, and it'd be spinning. And every 5 or 10 seconds, he'd have to grab it and replace it and let go of it, and then continue talking, and then he'd have to grab it again. And clearly, he's experiencing the same issue that we have here in this simulation, where it is so difficult to not impart any rotational momentum or translational momentum. So anyway, I just thought that was an interesting little side story. So here we are. This is the corridor set. So this is from season 1. The season 2 corridor is different again, and I didn't even attempt to model that. But so this representation is quite accurate to what was in the TV show. There are differences, and I'll go through those when we go into the full size version. But the extent of this corridor, it's definitely here. And then when we see camera shots looking down in this direction, we see these two double doors, and we see the corridor turning in this direction, in this direction. But we never see what actually happens once you do turn down there. And this is why my interpretation of this section is not canon. But my interpretation of this part, where this is what connects obviously to main mission, this definitely does happen in the show. This little corner here and this double wide corridor. And I think I even mentioned before, these windows aren't necessarily here, but there is one shot where we see a window in this location here, with Commander Koenig listfully looking outside the window, and we can see the entry into main mission here, and then the corridor can continue on behind him down there. So since that shot had a window here, and we've got another shot where there is no window, I thought it would be a good compromise for me to put these windows out of sight when you look down here, but present, because there was this indication that there in fact was a window along there. So this is starting to become less and less canon, and then this is definitely just made up by me to try to connect that with main mission in some way. So like I mentioned before, these little dioramas are so cute. To look at the detail in the model, it's just exquisite because, I mean, this is miniaturized from the full-size version, and there is so much detail in it. Now the video phone booths, the receptionist desk. It took me a while to research that desk and try to scaling this desk from the TV show. Turned out to be a bit more of a headache than I anticipated. I had to reverse engineer this graphic symbol here for the map of Moonbase Alpha, and then all the little destinations. And then the travel tube. The travel tube turned out. When I started modeling this, I thought, yeah, this will be a breeze because I've already done the hard work with the main mission, and I've worked out the panel size, and I've worked out all of these different types of illuminated wall panels and the corner pieces, and I thought, yeah, it'll just be a jigsaw puzzle or a Lego puzzle, basically. But as usual, it turned out to be more work than I thought, because every little thing that's different has to be modeled. The little signs and the wording on the signs, and then the inconsistency in the TV show from episode to episode and shot to shot. And some shots, basically this one corridor was just redressed for so many different shots. I mean, sometimes they'd have actors running through here, up through the middle of the corridor and turning in there, and then the next shot would have the same actor running back the other way. And then in that second shot, they'd maybe move these comms posts and change the signage above the doors or whatever. So they just redressed the sets. But it's clearly the same set. And so this one corridor set was obviously just reused over and over and over again. They would often not, strategically not point the camera down this way or this way, or even in fact that way and this way. So it's difficult to find out what was actually supposed to be happening there. And in a lot of the shots, this wall was really just a dead end. It didn't show any doors. It was just paneling, a dead end. And likewise with there and there. But clearly these comms posts have got these signage above them which point to something going off in that direction. And this points to something going off in that direction. So I've put in these doors, which often weren't shown in the TV show. So that's a little bit non-canon, but again, to me, it's more logical because the signs imply that people do go through there. So it's kind of non-canon, but it's also logical. Now, with the travel tube, it's so cute as well. And also, I just finished the travel tube this week, so this is all new to me. So I'm more enamored by this than I am by this because I finished this about a month ago. The little luggage containers, as close as I could get to what they had in the show. I did make. So as I said, this is from season 1. In season 2. What they did to this travel tube is they chopped off this last row of chairs, and this wall here was pushed up to about this location here. So you only had 2 chairs, 2 of these vents, and the whole thing was just shrunken. I don't know why they needed to do that. I mean, I know second season that they got rid of the main mission and everything was just made so much smaller, but losing maybe a meter off this travel tube, I don't know what they gained by doing that. I guess somebody did a cost analysis and determined that it was the right thing to do. So that's how season 2 travel tube is different in that regard, but otherwise I think the rest of it is consistent in season 2. Travel unit number 2. Now, in the TV show, the screen captures of the show, they're obviously walking in and out of this door. Sometimes you see this door open and they've got maybe a stretcher or something coming in through this door. But this door here, this is the one that leads to the Eagle transporter. And in fact, these lights that you see on the side wall, they are meant to indicate movement. So the idea is that when you're inside the travel tube is moving in this direction, and those lights would be fixed points in the tube that it's traveling in, and that moves in that direction. Now, the way that I did these lights, you can see the light starts at this end, it goes and it continues past the door. Yeah, so there's this theoretical time that it takes to pass the door, and then it continues on the next section. In the TV show, they did it a little bit differently. They actually had the lights starting here, and then from that point to that point, it was instantaneous, and then it continued along as it does. So to me, that kind of didn't make sense, because the idea is this is traveling through a tube, and there's maybe a stationary point that is passing the tube, and so that indicates speed that they're traveling at. And for this to go instantaneously from that point to that point, but then become a finite speed from that point to that point, didn't make sense. So I had the light moving through in this consistent manner, and therefore there's a pause as it passes the door. Now, this door, as I was saying, typically in the TV show, this door would open up to a little room, an antechamber here. So there'd be a little, maybe 3 meter by 3 meter room here. And then that would open up to the passenger pod. Where's the Eagle? I'll get the Eagle in a second. It would open up to the passenger pod in the Eagle transporter, which would be here. So I would be really curious to hear from somebody who knows more about the show than I do, about how they set up these sets in the TV show. Was this travel tube a mobile set? Were they able to move it out of the way? Because there are some shots where this door leads to a, I don't remember what it was. It was like a hibernaculum or a herbarium or something. I don't remember what it was, but there was clearly some other room through this door that wasn't the travel tube. So this must have been able to have been moved out of the way. And then so likewise for the passenger pod, the interior of the Eagle passenger pod would be here. And then I guess the nose cone of the command module of the Eagle would be about here. So I would be really curious to hear from anybody who knows how the actual sets were arranged, back in England when they were making the TV show. Let me just find the Eagle. Oh, there it is up there. I'll just set the moon gravity back. If I go and grab the Eagle, here we go. So the way I understand it, in terms of, I'm talking about the set on stage, how it was put together. So they had the standing set for the corridor, and they had this travel tube at the end of that corridor, which you can clearly see. And then you had this main, I don't know how this main mission would have been configured relative to this corridor on the set. But clearly they had, this door would open, there would be an antechamber, and then that door in the Eagle would open. So the configuration would have been something like that, I guess. Oops. We've got self-intersection happening here. You can see if I try to push that through, this thing is reacting. So I think that would have been the relative position of the interior of this. Oh, sorry, no, it would have been this way. So I think that was kind of something like that in terms of the set of the interior of this passenger pod. So there was an antechamber, and then there was the passenger pod, and then the inside of that would have been something like here. That's assuming if it wasn't all mobile. If it was all fixed. But if this was a mobile object, then I guess this and that could have been all off to some side somewhere. But yeah, a bit of trivia that I'd love to know. Actually, another bit of trivia. The distance from this door through to that wall is now 53 meters. So there's 53 meters of Space 1999 sets that you can walk through and explore and feel at one-to-one for yourselves. So that was the corridor. This is the main mission diorama. Now, I encountered a small technical bug, which I don't know if you probably won't remember, but in the previous versions of this diorama, that screen there had an animated video on it, and in fact, so did that screen there. What I was finding, because now this diorama is able to be turned off and the next one turned on, whenever you turn on this diorama, the videos would reset from the beginning. And the problem was, the video that you see in this, look, you can see the bug. That's funny. This was the bug. This video would start on its own, because it's the same video, this one would start on its own cycle. And then if I'd turned that one on out of phase, it would interfere, and that's what you would see. Now, I thought I'd fixed it. I thought I'd fix that bug by disabling the videos altogether and just having that static image. I don't know how to fix it. I think it's going to have to stay. Actually, I think I do know how to fix it. I may have to create an entirely new material, but I'm not going to do that now. But still, all of the other little animations work, and the flashing lights, and the spinning globe, and the spinning orrery, and so on. Oh, I don't know if you can. I'm sure you can see them, but I've also added now some of the cups on Commander Koenig's desk, on the conference room table. And these are the cups that were in the show. They had orange and white versions of these cups and green and red versions of these cups. As you can see there. Okay, so that's that. Let's just reset everything. It's so cute. Now, okay, so let's make our way slowly through the scenes. So this is the diorama scene. Now, previously, this first scene used to be called Main Mission, but now I'm calling it Moonbase Alpha because it includes Main Mission and the corridors and so on. So that's changed. These three scenes are pretty much unchanged, except that over here in this travel tube, I've now got this new luggage item, these cylindrical containers. So I've added those containers along with those other containers in these other scenes. So in this scene, this is the hangar scene. As you can see there, this is probably the most incomplete scene because the plan is that in fact, the next thing that I add to this project is either going to be the underground hangar, which would access via this elevated launch pad, or I do the interior of the Eagle. I'm not sure which one. The hangars are more difficult because I can't find. There's a few photos, but there's absolutely nothing about how this connects with the underground cavernous hangars. And I don't like to just make stuff up. I try to be as close to canon as possible. But anyway, so here in this scene, I've added these cylindrical containers, which are pretty cute in their own right. Now, I couldn't see any latches or anything like that on the containers in the screenshots that I had, so I didn't model any hatches. Maybe latches. Maybe I should. I'm not sure. So that's there, and we can throw them around. If I can try and hit that. Nope, not. That one might work. Maybe too hard. Oh, just missed. So that's added to these scenes. And extra ones down here. So that was added to the Hangar Scene. Likewise with the VIP Eagle scene. Again, this is mostly unchanged from before, with the exception of adding these additional containers. In fact, if I change the gravity to none and throw that in there, we get that happening. I keep forgetting I shouldn't move my head around too quickly, because probably on YouTube it might look a bit disorientating. When you're in VR, it makes total sense to move your head around as fast as you want, because you have agency and you know what you're about to do. But on a YouTube video, it may be disconcerting. So I keep forgetting to be more gentle with my head movement. Okay, so again, not much changed in this scene other than those additional containers. And likewise with the Rescue Eagle, there's no change at all. This is pretty much identical to what we had before. I guess I should just mention this section of the launch pad in the TV show obviously has a lot more stuff happening here. These columns are, I think, they're pretty accurate. But then there's all this cryogenic stuff that's bolted to these, and there's all these platforms through here, and there's very few photos that I can see what actually is going on. So I haven't even attempted to model it beyond just showing this platform and these columns. And I'm pretty sure these columns are kind of accurate in terms of their scale and position and so on. Let's turn on the afterburner on. And turn it off. And turn off the engine coolant. So that's the smoke effect that was happening underneath the engines. Turn that back on. And there we go. So this scene is pretty much unchanged. And then finally, the actual Moonbase Alpha. Let me recenter myself in my room. So here we are, going to the Moonbase Alpha. And this is the travel tube. So now, this is our arrival point in this new scene. Previously it was in the main mission, but now it is here inside this travel tube. So often, actually I don't know if you can hear Helena Russell's monologue. This monologue is actually from the first episode in Season 2. So, considering that I tried to do everything from Season 1, but this is the only decent monologue that I found to put in this position. We often see photos of this travel tube, the camera positioned here and then the actors sitting in those chairs. And you can see here the lights as the travel tube. Now, theoretically, these lights indicate that the travel tube is moving, whereas clearly the door is open and we are sitting stationary in the corridor. So these lights should not currently be pulsating the way that they are. But, it's kind of boring if it's not. So I've turned them on for the sake of it looking cool. But strictly speaking, they should not be pulsating right now. So now the construction of setting up the scale of this travel tube proved a little bit more difficult than I thought, naively. But I think I've got it pretty close to the final scale and proportions and size that was in the TV show. Basically, we have 4 modules, 4 equally spaced modules there and there. And from my measurements, they come out to 1,440 millimeters, so 1440 or 1.44 meters. Now, that's a really nice number, because here we have these acoustic, well, I call them acoustic panels. There's exactly 6 acoustic panels. So 1440 divided by 6 equals 240 millimeters. So each one of those is 240 millimeters. Now, these pulsating lights there are exactly 9 of those in one module. So then that gives me a really nice round number of 160 millimeters. That's all kind of irrelevant whether it's even numbers, but the fact that I have 9 in one of these modules means that I get a certain this gap, which is, you know, again in the TV show, and that gap there. And what that means is then that module replicates here really cleanly, and, you know, almost as though it was designed, because, you know, the joints all line through. That gap there ends up being the same as that gap there, in terms of this acoustic paneling thing, and it all just works perfectly. The problem is the TV show. So this gives us 17 of those little illuminated panels across there. The problem is the TV show has 18 of those panels. I didn't realize at first. I measured the panels as best I could from the screenshots, and they came out to roughly, you know, 160. And I thought, wow, that's perfect. It fits exactly in the module. But then I found some video footage in one of the later episodes, and I counted precisely, you know, the illuminations, and paused, and it was 18 panels. So then I tried to model it with 18, and it just didn't work, in the sense that whatever you ended up having left over here, trying to do those same 18 panel size things here, the module just didn't work. We ended up having a much bigger gap there, and it was just all much uglier. So I bit the bullet, and I thought, no, I'm going to go off Canon and do this my way and have it all line through and all work beautifully there and here, and be done with it. So that's one thing that I deliberately changed a very little bit from what the TV show had. Now, this panel here, so here we've got these, I guess there's some sort of air grills throughout this whole environment, and then this, I don't know what that is, maybe a microphone. Oh, I mean a speaker, sorry, not a microphone. Now this panel is from Season 1. Season 2 of this panel is based on this first Season 1, but then they've changed this to be a big red button, and they've added, so this black border, they've added a black border there with more red buttons there and there. And then they did their usual trick where they took the Letraset sheets and just pasted some extra you know, busy text. And unfortunately, the text was just that standard, pretty much just alphabet from the Letraset sheets, and it was just totally meaningless. So even though I model everything from Season 1 as much as I can, if there's something more interesting from Season 2, you know, I could be tempted to use that instead. And in this case, I would have liked to have used the busier buttons that were here, but the Letraset stuff was just pointless, and I thought there's no point making up something different just for it to look a little bit busier than it does in this Season 1 version. So I stuck with Season 1 in this case. Now, this sign is spot on. We could read what that said, and, you know, it even talks about, I think, it talks about a red handle which operates the escape hatchway. Now, I don't know where there's a red handle, but this wording is then replicated here above each of these door controls, and it's the exact same wording here as it is over there. And, you know, here it definitely doesn't, you know, there's definitely no red handle or hatchway or access to spacesuits or whatever. So the wording is a little bit non-specific and probably even incorrect for some of these places, you know, there and so on. Now, this wording here, I couldn't make that out at all from the screenshots from the TV show. And in fact, I ended up making up the wording, but when I say made up, I still kept the same number of lines of text and the rough number of words and you know, the proportions that I could make out from the blurry screenshots. But the actual words, I don't know what that would have said. So here I made up something about emergency oxygen supply. So there and there, and to me that kind of made sense because people are sitting down there, and if something happens, they've got oxygen there. This one here, I use different wording, and so this one just talks about a maintenance panel and hermetic seals and so on. I assume you can see that. So I had to make up that wording. Now, the signage above these doors, it turns out, again, working through all of the screen captures, you see this and you think, okay, that's the same graphic element that's above all the doors, but it turns out no. The vertical dimension above this door is much smaller than the vertical dimension above this door, and in fact they did have a different. That in fact is different from that. If you look at, for instance, the little labels, so here it says emergency services for this brown box, whereas here that emergency thing is much lower down because there's more room and it's all less crowded. For instance, here, this little upturn here, it doesn't have one there. Likewise, I think this little upturn here and that connecting corridor there, they don't exist there or there. The size of this circular section here is a bit bigger over there than it is over here because there just wasn't enough room. When I say not enough room, this is how it was on the TV show there, and that's how it was on the TV show there. It's not as though I'm making it different. The thing that I couldn't tell from the screenshots from the TV show is any of this writing. Couldn't make out any of that at all. The only bit of writing that I could make out was the main mission because it's so large. So that. Now, all of this writing, living quarters, gymnasium, solarium 2, all that sort of stuff, I didn't totally make that up either. I got that from that graphic panel there. Now, this graphic panel here talks about computer banks and chemistry research and gymnasium and solarium 1 and solarium 2. So I actually took all of that wording and inserted it into all of these labels in a way that hopefully it made some sort of sense. So around the main mission, I tried to keep the computer banks and the security stuff and the restaurants and the living quarters, I don't know, and the nuclear stuff, well away from everything else, and the launch pads, hydroponic farming and all that sort of stuff. So all of these words were taken from that thing over there. And so in the TV show, let me recenter myself. This is the door that would lead to that antechamber, and then through that antechamber you would go into the passenger pod of the Eagle transporter. So if I stick my head through here, you can see it's just blank. But this is where the antechamber would be, and then that way and that way is where the set for the passenger pod would be. And then through here, sometimes you see those doors open, and there's a narrow corridor going past there. So I think that's all I can really say about this space. Those labels, again, as close as I could get from what I could see in the screen captures. That purple thing, I think I saw in some of the containers, and it was on the other side of what that was. So that purple is on that back side. Now, as I did with the main mission set, once I get enough of the geometry in place, I take the screen captures and I match the perspective of the screen captures to my 3D model. And so I've taken those matched perspective screen captures, and I put them into this scene as well. So if we go to the menu. Over here we've got on the left show TV screenshots. So if I do that, and I come over here and we can see the screenshots. Now let me just go back to this middle one. So earlier on I was saying that graphic pattern is different from the one over there, but I assumed that that would be the same. It wasn't until actually just recently when I was checking this out and looking up here, I could see that they've got this extra label just there, which isn't present there. But I wasn't going to do two separate labels for those two things. It's just an extra texture that has to be incorporated into the VR project, and you know, you're trying to keep it all as efficient as possible. So yeah, I've got those two identical and that one different instead of having three different ones. But anyway, so this is the style of the screenshot. So as before, theoretically you should be able to put your eye, you know, in the right location, move back far enough or close enough or whatever, and the perspective will exactly match the 3D model. And the nice thing about seeing these perspective match images, you get to see the actors in the environment as it was in the TV show. You can see here in this screenshot, they removed the comms post in the center of the corridor. Now, if we come over here and look at the rest of these screen captures, so what I'm doing now is the old trick which I mentioned before, which is grabbing the world. So if I press both triggers and move them up and down, I can move the world around. So here we see Commander Koenig coming through the door, and so this is that antechamber that I mentioned, and that door you see behind him, and in fact that little black element there, that's the side of the Eagle transporter. So whether I do the hangar bay or the Eagle transporter interior next, I don't know, but that's where I think I'll do the Eagle transporter once I do get to it. And you can see the graphic thing there is turned, the illumination is turned off in this particular shot. And that's that little cylindrical container there, and you can see the red and yellow and green colors that you see in the thing there. Along with these brown luggage racks, or whatever you want to call them. And again, here you can see those illuminated panels terminated with that small section of acoustic paneling similar to that. Now, this is that toga chair that I used in the main mission set. And if you remember from my previous walkthroughs, this toga chair I didn't model. I found it on the internet. And the actual form of this chair isn't super accurate to the original. And you'll see in some of these other shots where the toga chair has got a much straighter back to it. So that's that scene. Now, we've got an image just there. If I stand on this chair and just back up a little bit, we can see this screen capture is, I think, from season 2. So I don't think I've got any screenshots looking in this direction with the shortened version of this travel tube. But anyway, so this is season 2, and there you can see the back of the cylindrical container with that purple thing. Now, you know, each shot has got these containers in different positions, so I had to place them in one position, and so it's not consistent with this photo, but those are consistent with other photos. This particular screen capture was really difficult to match the perspective, partly because we're so close to the geometry, and any differences in dimension just are exaggerated. But yeah, I mean, here you can see the illuminated panel frozen in position as it passes in my animated section there. And there you can see the vertical side of the toga chairs. Again, it's a different shape to what I've got for my toga chairs, but it's close. It's close enough. Okay, this is another shot. Again, just the whole point is just to show the context and how the people, scale of the people in the environment and so on. In this case, we've got the illuminated panel. Okay, so if I teleport to here and turn around, so here we have one of the classic shots, and in this case the camera is in fact through the door and probably out here somewhere, and you can see here I am outside. And there you can see the Season 1 version of that panel with those illuminated lights that you can see over there. Whereas in Season 2 they had a whole lot more busy, a whole lot more busy buttons and things like that happening. And you can see, I mean, the people are sitting down. It was interesting when I first got into this space in VR. It felt very small, or much smaller than it appeared here. But really, I mean, these people are sitting and their heads are barely, well, are at that location. So you can imagine when John Koenig or someone stands up, his head's up here somewhere. Yeah. So here's another shot with the luggage rail, and again the simplified version of that panel. And in fact, if I do that, it was quite difficult to get the right color of the paneling as well. The problem with these photos from the TV show is that the white balance is so different from shot to shot. Sometimes the lighting is very warm, other times it's very cool, other times it's illuminated, and other times not. So you can compare the brown color of these panels here to the color of the panels. Oh, that one's... Well, yeah, to the color of these panels here. I mean, there's almost green tinge to them here. But so interestingly, the panels, these acoustic panels, are very textured surface, and I'm not modeling the texture. It's just too much. There's no way you physically model that. So it's done as a two-dimensional texture. So here, where you see this light dark effect, it's because you're seeing it. Sometimes you're seeing it perpendicular to the ridges, and other times you're seeing it parallel to the ridges, and that's kind of difficult to simulate here. So my texture has got a little bit of a gap as the two ridges meet, and that sort of implies the separation between that 240 millimeter acoustic panel, but that separation is much more obvious in the actual TV show, although it's not obvious there on the back wall. Okay, so that's all of the screen captures in the travel tube. Let me just turn those off. And now let's go into the corridor. So the corridor, like I was saying before, I started on this first, and I imagined this would go really quickly because I'm reusing elements from the first one. The panels are 1.22 meters wide, which is 4 feet. And so it's all on a module. So I thought, yes, you beauty, it will all go quickly and I can move on to the next bit. But as usual, every little bit that's different takes time to reverse engineer and work out and so on. And just even working out the layout of this corridor, trying to find all the screen captures that would show you what's happening around this corner. And like I said in the Diorama Scene, most often you would see this as a dead end. That door would not be there. Or sometimes that wall panel would actually be on this line here. I don't think I ever saw the camera pointing in that direction. Likewise here at the end, I don't think I ever saw the camera pointing full on at that wall. and again very few times on that graphic symbol. Now, as it turns out, this graphic symbol is actually from Season 2. It wasn't until I finally finished all of that, like all of the screen captures that I found, and in fact I used the Catacombs website a lot for this. The Catacombs website had their version of the layout of these corridors, and I think they actually even got some things wrong. Because in the TV show, I found a shot, just one shot of a whole crowd of people standing right here, and over their shoulder I could see those illuminated panels there. And in fact, in other shots, I could see the illumination from that wall illuminating this wall here, but I couldn't see what that was, except for this one shot. Whereas the Catacombs website, it lays out this corridor, and it does not indicate illuminated panels there, but they are definitely there. That illuminated panel I couldn't see in any photos, but since there was one there, I put that one in as well. Like I said, the TV show would often show just a blank wall there, and yet there would be these signs indicating something's over there and indicating something's over there. So I included the door. But in most cases that wasn't. And in fact, some of the shots showed people coming from main mission through that area into this region here, when in other shots they showed that as a dead end. So it's all very inconsistent. This E, I think that was from Season 1, in the first pilot episode, Season 1. Although most of the screenshots that I have show an S there. A lot of them do show that T symbol, this T icon. And then also these labels here, the 1 and the 1. Sometimes they showed, I can't even remember now, different letters, maybe an S or something. But it varied so much, and sometimes there was nothing, and so it's all inconsistent as well. Often with the corridors, this would be here in this position, but then other times, just so, if they're shooting the camera up that way, you can see this thing's in the way. So they would just move this to about here somewhere, so that the camera had a clear side of that. And other times they would just move that entirely out of the way. Yeah, very inconsistent. Now the signage as well. In the TV show and the Catacombs website, I think it points out that these only ever had 3 signs, 3 for here and 3 for that one. So I think I did duplicate that one. Technical engineering, power distribution, and reconnaissance, I think, is a duplicate of that one. So that points up there, and then, oops, and then that goes that way. So that's a duplicate. Because, well, when I say duplicate, that's probably the original, and this is the duplicate, because these other 3 were probably the native ones on this post. But they were all interchanged and moved in different locations depending on which shot you're looking at. And so here, because in that establishing shot, Commander Koenig and Victor Bergman arrive on Moonbase Alpha through here, and he walks down the corridor. He clearly keeps walking. He walks past this thing and down here towards main mission. So that was the rule that I was following for where main mission was, instead of main mission being up through there. And so that's why here I made sure that the label said main mission that way. And there you can see it says living quarters and restaurants, and so that's what I did there and there. So if we... Actually, before we go down here, let's just finish talking about what we've done here. So these chairs are often visible in that location, and sometimes that chair as well. So this is the graphic symbol for the Moonbase Alpha. Now, I don't know if I finished explaining this. So I originally started reverse engineering this graphic symbol from the screenshots, and it turned out the screenshots that I had were all from Season 2 of this object, and they were bad. It was really difficult to work out what was actually going on. But anyway, I finally finished it, and all of this, I think you could sort of see it, but I also got it off the Catacombs website. It was difficult to make out what any of this said. But that's kind of roughly what I saw in the blurry images. So anyway, I'd finished it all, and then I found some screenshots from Season 1 of this panel, and it's actually a different graphic symbol. It's a much more colourful version, but the screenshots were so bad that there's no way that I could reverse engineer those. Well, when I say those, it was just one that I saw. So, as much as this is a Season 2 corridor, that graphic symbol is... Sorry, as much as this is a Season 1 corridor, that graphic symbol is from Season 2. But it's a pretty close representation of what was in Season 2 for that symbol, but similar to Season 1. So, that's just a close-up view of all of the wording. So main mission is there. What does it say about A? Living quarters. H. Yeah, I mean, how are you supposed to read this? I don't know. You've got A, B, C, D this way, and then A, B, C, D this way, and then different colours and dots. And so Solarium number 1 is purple, and so it's B and B. Solarium, so that would be a solarium, I guess. B, what does it say here? B is a nuclear reactor. So, I don't know. How are you supposed to read that? Now, here we have the red alert symbol. And I put that here because in main mission, I think I explained at one point, this time is the time that the nuclear explosion happened, 14 minutes past 8 at night. And so since this was the time of the nuclear explosion, I put the red alert icon on these TV screens. Over here, these cool little video booths. The TV show had that red label up there on that one, but it didn't have any label on that side. But to me, it seemed logical that you would have both. And I couldn't make out the text clearly, but my vague interpretation was that maybe it said TV 13, so therefore I made that TV 12. Now this glass object is a pretty close representation of what was shown in the TV show, along with the TV screen, the speaker grill, and these control buttons. This EM14, I don't think that was very clear. I didn't make that out very clearly. And this text here, AO, that couldn't make that out at all. And in fact, I copied the text from that. So these buttons, the EO and AO, and these chrome buttons are copied off that and put there. These text panels couldn't make out any of that text at all. And instead of just having blank square-shaped objects, I did go to the trouble of putting in some text. I could count the number of lines of text, and it turned out to be whatever that is, I don't remember. And that turned out coincidentally to be exactly the number of words that are there and there. So I thought, well, I'll just take those words and I'll put them there. So this is a reproduction, so here it says Moonbase Alpha directory. So all those words are the words that you see over there on the directory. And those codes, theoretically, you key in somewhere, somehow, to talk to that area of Moonbase Alpha. Up here, I couldn't read that at all, but again, I could see that it was 3.5 lines of text, and so I just made up some words that roughly filled that space. And likewise with this, the paragraphs all matched the blurred object that I could see in the screenshots, but obviously I couldn't see any of what the word said. So here I just talk about video transmission latency and try to make it sound scientific-ish. And then likewise the delay going from moon, so Earth communications via the Iridium constellation, 1.4 seconds. So that's kind of the one-way speed of light transit time. Maybe it should have been two-way. Anyway, doesn't matter. Phobos orbital platform around Mars. 4.2 minutes at perihelion and 21 minutes at aphelion. And I just got those numbers from how far Mars, the closest and furthest approach of Mars from the Earth. So that's that text. And so before we proceed down to main mission, which we've already seen anyway, but we'll just go there and have a look. Let's look at the screenshots for the corridor. So here you can see this green illuminated panels. Now I did try putting green illuminated panels here, and it illuminated this whole space and made it look sickly. It didn't look good with this green sickly light all over it. As pretty as it looks here, it didn't look so good in VR. So I went back to having the white panels. But here in this thing, this is where you can see, and in fact my text is a little bit thin and not as populated as what you can see here. But the number of lines is the same. Likewise with the top section, the number of lines is the same, and then those paragraphs is the same. And that's sort of the quality of what I had to go with for what may have been written there. And there's that little blue label that I couldn't make out what was there. Now, this reminds me of something as well. Like I said, I thought this corridor would be a breeze because it's all modular and I can just plug things in. And sure enough, it is. It's on this 1,220 millimeter module, which is 4 feet. So everything is either 1220 or 2440 millimeters in size. And so the module, so that's 1220 plus 1220, which equals 1440. The problem is, in the TV show, there is an aberration. And for some reason, that's where this panel should stop. But for some reason in the TV show, they added an extra 75 mil or 3 inches. So they added an extra 75 mil this way and this way. And yet the ceiling module somehow had to work. So it's difficult to know what to do correctly. But so this module, I did make it 75 millimeters longer than all the other modules, so that this wall was centered on that ceiling structure. And in the screen capture, it clearly looks, if I just go back to here, in this screen capture, that wall is definitely centered on that. I'm pretty sure it is anyway. In terms of my perspective matches, it worked best when I did center that wall on that thing. But that's where the centering stopped, because so this 1220 panel was shifted across because of this extra thing here, and then over here you can see this wall is not centered on the grid, and it's not centered on that grid there, and that is, the whole thing has been pushed 75 mil that way, in other words. And as far as I can tell, that is what happened on the set. Whereas when you look at it on the grid here, this panel is centered. whereas there it's not centered. And that is definitely as it was. And in fact, in one of the screenshots, I did see that this thing was hard up. This plane was hard up against this plane, similar to what I've got here, which is not what you see there. There's a separation. So that sort of had me flummoxed for a while, trying to work out what they were doing and why they would do it. I have no idea. But you can clearly see there's some funny shenanigans going on here. Okay, so here we see more of... Oh, and so here you can see they clearly have this as a dead end, and yet there's some light coming from... You can see this being illuminated by something, and that something is that illuminated wall. And again, I've got an E there, whereas they've got an S there. And then if we come down here... Oh, this is that shot that I was talking about before. So this is from Season 1, and you can see this version for Season 1 is definitely much more colourful than the Season 2 version. And the graphics are different as well. So here in the bottom left, you can see this green section, whereas there's no green over there. They've got like an orange and blue section there, and it's just different. But this lower section looks pretty much the same. And here you can see they've removed these comms posts entirely, and they've got these orange labels on the panels, similar to what I've got over there. Although theirs looks like the letter A. Okay. Here we have Helena walking down the corridor, and so there is clearly where I got the number 1 from. I didn't put that little yellow label in because in other shots it's not there, and who knows. And in fact, the red alert, you can see red alert vaguely in that shot there. And then this is the scene, the opening scene where Commander Koenig arrives on... I'm tangled up in my cable. This is the establishing shot where Commander Koenig arrives on Moonbase Alpha with Victor Bergman escorting him from the Eagle. And in fact, this is the old commander of Moonbase Alpha. He's being replaced by Commander Koenig. And you can see the travel tube beyond with a little step from the travel tube ramp. And these labels, again, I didn't put them in because there are other shots where they're just not there. This shot is a little bit overexposed, but there is that yellow circle with the arrow in it just there. This is one of the examples where they just redressed the set and changed the sign to say auxiliary services. Whereas in this one, it says Travel Unit 2. The sign there is different from that one, but again, it's different from every other scene as well. So it's just how you want to combine the signs to make sense. And you can see here, they don't show a sign on this side of the comms post, whereas in other shots, there clearly is a sign there. So I opted to have these signs pointing in down corridors rather than having a sign here pointing at the travel tube. So we've seen that, and then this is another shot. Again, so here now, in this one, you can see that sign is the same as the one over there. And in fact, that red and blue sign would really be this red and blue sign. So in that shot, in this shot, they're implying that main mission is there. But in other shots, they've got different signs there. But they implied that main mission is that way, which is basically that red and blue sign there, main mission. Whereas I didn't do that because I've got main mission that way. And there you can see the chair, which is over there. That chair there. We've got the video phone thing. And then a red letter S on the sign. There we have a purple letter S. There we have the yellow one. And then in other ones, we've got the blue E. Okay, here we have again. So again, here we've got that red label on the side of the door. Here, well, we can't see the red label, but there's no labels there. Whereas in this shot, it does have a label there. So that was all inconsistent. So I didn't put the labels on. And in fact, that label to me the wording looks exactly the same as that wording. Okay, and then again, this particular shot doesn't have any labeling on that corner panel either. And Helena Russell there clearly came from, she looks like she's turning the corner, going this way. So she came from somewhere over there. And the sign says that it's the gymnasium or the maintenance workshop. Here we've got the solarium, medical, psychological, and okay, so that's the corridor here. And so, as I said, clearly the corridor does this, and then beyond this point lay dragons, because we don't know what this does. But my interpretation is this: this double wide corridor splits off into the two, and over here, this single corridor meets people coming from the restaurant, which goes down this double corridor. And so we've got the E for restaurant and A for quarters. So this is the corridor that now connects through to main mission. So, and the glass windows looking out over the landscape. And then this is where we see Commander Koenig and Victor Bergman come into main mission. So if I come over here, you can see this shot. So this is clearly outside of main mission. So that's that entrance there. And so here we can see there's 2 of those ceiling panels. So it's a double corridor that turns that way with no windows, as you can see there. So that's definitely how this corridor goes. Okay. I'll just turn off those screens and let's enter the main mission. So you've seen main mission before. The only changes that I've now made is I've added some of these cups with hot chocolate inside. Now, I think I may have gone overboard with the cups. Maybe I've got too many of them. Nice cup of coffee. And you can see that coffee texture is the same as that coffee texture there, and the same as the coffee texture in a lot of the others. Different beverages. And basically these red and green cups, I actually, again, went through the screenshots, and wherever a screenshot had a red or a green cup, I put one in there. So just get a close look at the cup. So again, that's as close as I can get to the real thing. And in fact, let's just have a look at the screen captures. I wonder if you can see any cups. Oh yeah, look, here we go. Here is a green cup, and there is a green cup. Just see if there's any more. Yeah, no cups there. But there are plenty of other screenshots, and the cups are sprinkled all over the place. A couple of cups here. What's he got? Some dark chocolate and different chocolate. Now these cups, again, they're from the show. If you have a close look. In VR, these are really quite small, these cups. I mean, they're almost like little cappuccino cups. But no, that's the actual size that I could scale from what I could see in the screenshots. And I didn't. I should go back to the lobby area. But this light fixture, this is the a floor-mounted light version of this light. But that same light fixture with the same steel tube is the same light as we see here. So this is the same design language that was used on the floor light. Instead, this is a desk version. And again, there are screenshots of this from the TV show. And there's our orange coffee cup. Now this desk, and this is, again, it was in the screenshots. This is the same desk tidy that we see on Commander Koenig's desk. And so this desk is, again, very modular. Under here, I didn't model it, but there's little grooves here, and theoretically you could slot in some shelves into there, and maybe take that away. So the desk was a very modular unit. Just inspecting the detail. I didn't bother putting any videos on these screens because theoretically they don't come on until somebody initiates a video call. So, like I said before, in the Diorama Scene, the distance from this door here to the far wall of Commander Koenig's office is 53 meters. To this wall here is 53 meters. So that's the new addition. Basically the corridor set, environment as it was done in season 1. Now I've seen on various YouTube videos, other people doing Space 1999 3D VR modeling and so on. They've opted to model, it seems strange to say fictitious, but they've made up the corridors for their Moonbase Alpha, which isn't based on any TV screenshots at all. I really wanted to just reproduce what was done on set to make the TV show, and as far as I can tell, this is a pretty accurate reproduction of the set that they used in England in 1975 to make the TV show. With the travel tube sitting off, one end of it here. And like I said, the next thing that I work on, who knows when I'll complete it, but it will either be the interior of the passenger pod on the Eagle transporter, or it'll be the underground hangar that would slot into the hangar scene right here. But anyway, that's it for now. Hopefully some of you have virtual reality headsets and can download this project from itch.io and experience all of this stuff in one-to-one glory. Have fun. Signing off till next time. Bye.